Now, those of you who've seen my videos know that I have a great deal of animosity towards the physical therapy profession. Physical therapists, most of them I don't like. Most of them don't practice ethically. However, understand something. I don't have animosity towards the new graduates in physical therapy. Not yet, anyway. I am hoping that the new graduates are going to undo the colossal mess that my generation left physical therapy in. I hope they're going to operate with good ethics. I hope by the time their generation passes, the idea of seeing multiple patients at a time is going to be a thing of the past in my profession. I hope they have the ethics to understand when you can't solve everyone and to stop seeing the continuous chronic pain patient who can't be resolved. I really hope that they bring our profession back to a state where we can say it's honorable. And that's one of the reasons I started this channel. One, I'm going to call out this profession for all the lack of ethics that it engages in every single day. But two, I want to give a guide to the new graduates on how to be ethical therapists. Because God knows our senior therapists aren't going to give that to you most of the time. And again, it's not all of you screwing up this profession who are senior therapists, but it's definitely most of you. And if you want to see my reasons why, feel free to peruse through my dozen or so videos prior to this one on what you're doing in this field that wouldn't be considered ethical in any universe. But one of the ways, new graduates, as I said in another video, that you can greatly reduce this tremendous amount of debt that you're in is become a travel physical therapist. And you can look at my former video which discusses the pros and cons of travel physical therapy. But one of the ways that your life will be a lot easier as a travel physical therapist is if you know how to get the right recruiter. Because like every profession, there are good and bad recruiters, but the second you get licensed, you're going to get swamped with phone calls, emails, text messages from all these travel companies that want your business. I have had travel companies fighting for me nonstop, only a brief interlude when the COVID epidemic became a thing. But once that resolved, it went right back to where it was before, and I never get upset that travel companies are calling me asking me if I'll work for them. It's better for people to be calling you than nobody calling at all. So how do you navigate how to get a good recruiter or a bad one? Because having a good or bad recruiter will greatly affect your attitude towards travel therapy. Well, the first thing you do is you look up the travel company itself. You see if they're newly established or if they've been around for a while. And I will tell you, the smaller travel companies tend to be better. There is one huge company out there, I won't mention the name, but you'll know it soon enough, that basically was swallowing all of these smaller travel companies over the decades. And now they have become such a bureaucratic nightmare that a lot of us physical therapists won't work for them anymore, even though the recruiters are solid. So that's the first thing you need to look at, the travel company itself. And as you travel around, you're going to meet other travelers and they're going to give you good references on good recruiters, good travel companies, etc. But that's going to take a while before you make those contacts. The first thing you ask a potential recruiter is how long they've been at the job. Now understand, just because someone's new doesn't mean that they're not capable. I'd rather have somebody who's new and honest and forthright than some of these shady recruiters that are not honest and been doing it for years. And basically, I will call them because I want to get a tone of what their personality is like before I decide whether I'm going to work with them or not. And the first thing I do is I tell them my ethics. I tell them I will not work for companies that overlap patients, see two at a time in other words. And then I have a whole list of companies I won't even interview with that are these nationwide conglomerates that operate in such a fashion. And usually one of two things will happen. The recruiter will get it, or you'll never hear from them again. I have had recruiters that I've told this to, never contacted me again. Because you have to understand, there is some financial compensation involved with a recruiter finding assignments for travelers. And that's okay. Travel recruiters have to make a living too. But like physical therapists, some are willing to do it honestly and some are really shady about the matter. So once a recruiter understands how we're going to work and they're okay with that, then we can proceed forward. And now let's talk about when recruiters start giving you options on where you want to work. A good recruiter will give you everything in the state that you're trying to work in. In other words, they have a list of facilities that they're trying to place travel therapists in, physical and occupational, speech, etc. There are recruiters out there who will only give you the assignments that they're trying to offload. Because remember, if they're making money partially on commission, they know they can get rid of the easy assignments in Monterey versus some of the hard ones that are in the remote areas of the country. But the good recruiter won't try to do this. He'll just give you a list and then you pick where you might be interested in. The recruiters you want to stay away from are the recruiters who try to badger you into taking an assignment, usually an assignment that no one else wants. I had one recruiter that I kept on my list for about 2 years. I never took an assignment with him. He kept trying to badger me to go to places that weren't even in my states of licensure. His idea was, well, maybe you can apply for a license, say in Alabama somewhere. Well, first of all, by the time my license goes through, they're probably going to have already filled that position. And secondly, the reason he kept pushing for that assignment is because nobody wanted to work there in this small town in Alabama where they're known to have poor lifestyles and terrible outcomes. And he ended up not only losing me, but he also lost 2 other travelers I recommended because they got tired of him pushing them to go to places they didn't want to go. Again, they should give you a list and you decide who you're going to interview with, not the other way around. You cannot let these recruiters bully you, and the good ones won't try to bully you. I even knew one traveling nurse whose recruiter placed her in an assignment without even asking her. And this was a very passive person, so she didn't fight it. She didn't want to make waves. So she just let this recruiter keep placing her in these terrible assignments that she was offloading. Again, you control your destiny with a recruiter, and the good recruiters understand that, and the bad ones don't. Because a good recruiter knows it's a two-way street. You're honest with them, they're honest with you. Everybody makes money. And the recruiters who follow this principle end up keeping travelers long-term, so over the long term, they end up making more money over time. And the poor recruiters end up stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. And also, it's very important to understand that you be ethical with the recruiter. You have physical therapists out there that will get a lead from a recruiter, then go behind the recruiter's back, contact the facility, and try to set up a deal. Because that deal is going to be less than what the recruiter is going to be charging for you and the company. So they basically act as an independent contractor, but they're using the recruiter for leads. And really, the recruiter should drop that therapist because it's not honest and is taking his time and resources when he's trying to make a living too. I've always been very forthright with all my recruiters on how I operate because there are so many bad clinics out there that I usually have to use 3 different travel companies, 3 different recruiters. And when I was largely continuously working, I had to be licensed in 3 states. So that way there wouldn't be too much lag time between assignments. And I told this to recruiters up front. The recruiter I was currently working with would get first shot, and then I'd bring in the other recruiters if nothing was coming up. And again, what you don't want to do is start playing recruiters against each other. In other words, one offers an $1,800 take-home pay at the end of every week, then you go to the next recruiter who happens to have the same facility on their list and try to get them to up that to $2,000 take-home. A good recruiter is not going to put up with that because again, you're cutting into their livelihood. If you have a recruiter, you have that lead, you stick with that recruiter. And the recruiters I used long-term knew that. For instance, I had 2 ladies, Katie and Kim, from 2 different travel companies. Sometimes Katie had the best assignment, sometimes Kim had the best assignment. And Kim never got upset if I had to drop her to go to Katie because she knew eventually I'd probably rotate my way back depending on what travel company had what assignments at what time. And that's how you operate as an ethical therapist because there are ethics in business as well. And sometimes the recruiter is just fine, but the supporting staff isn't. You have to understand, a recruiter is only part of the picture. The supporting staff will many times set up interviews, they'll be in communication with their contact at the facility as a contract proceeds, and sometimes they're just not good. I had to drop a recruiter who was very fine, very conscientious. But his supporting staff just couldn't get me an interview. They just kept dragging their feet, and you have to remember that all these travel companies many times have the same facilities on their lists that they're all competing to try to get filled. So I ended up not even interviewing at 3 assignments because they got filled by other travel companies because the supporting staff just kept dragging their feet, like I said. Or I almost lost a contract because the facility decided to delay my start date, which was perfectly fine. I was just roaming the country. And the supporting staff member, who was not the recruiter, pretty much threatened the HR person and said I was about ready to walk off the contract. Reason being they were probably thinking they didn't want to lose that extra week's pay, which was silly because they would have gotten it eventually, it just would have been a week later. I had to call the HR person and smooth those waters who did not appreciate this attempt of being bullied. But in a nutshell, in this segment, that's how you get a good recruiter. they should present everything that is available. They should be in contact with you with the whole process. If you have a problem with the contract, the recruiter should immediately be bringing you to risk management. You have to remember, it's your world, not theirs. If you want to take a week off between assignments or you want to take a year off between assignments, that is 100% up to you. They don't get to dictate your destiny. And the good ones, they don't, because they understand the financial gain of longevity with their travelers. In future videos, in between my other ones about the lack of ethics in this profession, I'll be addressing how to interview, how to set up contracts, how to use risk management if there's a problem, and everything else that you would need to have a good experience as a traveler so you can have a good time, make a lot of money, and pay off those loans. But remember, the first step to good ethics is to have a good ethical recruiter to back you.